Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joined today by Warren King. Some of you might recognize him from EFC once or twice, a guy who's been around the scene quite a few years. Welcome to the show, firstly, bro, and thanks so much for your time, man.
Thanks, bro. It's good to be here.
Fantastic. So just to kind of gauge people on what we want to do, we've been discussing our plan going forward is to kind of put almost like a round table discussion where we get a couple of guys in here, discuss the fights, what's coming up, breakdowns, talk about the news, kind of make sure everybody, all the fans, stay up to date with what's happening in the EFC and in MMA in Africa in general. Touch base on the UFC cards. Obviously now in South Africa we've got access to UFC by Super Sport, so
no more star sets.
Yeah, no more star sets and dodgy streams and torrent downloads and stuff like that. So it's quite a cool setup now. If you've got a Fight Pass subscription, you've got access to your prelims, you've got access to the main card. You can record it onto your PVR. So it's a pretty cool setup. So the big basis for that is obviously there's such a big volume of news and stuff to stay up to date with, and I'm guessing there's going to be a lot of fans. Obviously, fans always have an opinion on what they see, but sometimes they're not always educated on what's happening. So it's nice to get guys like yourself that are involved in fighting and understand what's going on, and we'll get in other guests that understand different attributes and coaches and fighters, and they can help explain these things that as they come up, because we know with MMA there's always drama of some sort. There's always something coming up. So it's cool to hear other opinions. With that in mind, I thought, this being our first show together, obviously the MMA season as it is in South Africa hasn't quite kicked off yet, but already there's been so much that's happened. We can look at the biggest news that came out early in the year was the EFC Performance Institute, and it was quite a funny one for myself, and a lot of feedback from other guys. There was the EFC gym in Sandton, which everyone was like, what's really going on? And you Performance Institute,
kind of like a MMA gym, but not exactly, more a commercial gym. But that Performance Institute is next level.
Yeah. So let's maybe start there, one, if you can. So what do you think? I mean, you're a guy who's invested in fighting, you've been around the scene for a while. What does something like a EFC Performance Institute mean to the fighters and the sport in general?
Well, I think the biggest benefit is for actual EFC fighters. A lot of the time when you get there, first time you step foot in that cage is like a very foreign territory. You're not used to like how the canvas feels, like the type of size of the ring, because no one really has such big cages in South Africa. So I think for guys who can get some feeling in the cage and get some time in there before they actually step in there under the lights, I think that's great. From my understanding, like the whole setup that they've got there is like really angled around the sports side of things rather than the conventional UFC gym that was primarily like boxer size and getting people fit in the Sandton area. This is actually legitimately about performance, and all the type of equipment they've got there, from Techno Gym, the Zebra mats, and obviously having the actual UFC cage there, is all targeted at developing athletes rather than developing commercial, everyday type of guys. So I think it's a game changer for a lot of us, especially for guys that don't have access to the type of equipment that some of the other big gyms have. I mean, what a lot of guys don't know is like when we go to Durban, there's a couple of fighters from, I think it's the Super Gym or something like that. They don't even really have facilities. Now they're competing in the EFC cage, whereas if they had an opportunity to come and like utilize some of the equipment that the EFC can offer them in the Performance Institute, I think that will actually be very, very beneficial to them, as well as hopefully we can leverage some coaching in that environment that guys like that won't have access to necessarily. So I think it's probably the biggest game changer in the past 2 to 3 years. So looking forward to it, but obviously we haven't seen a lot of it yet, so we'll have to see what comes.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think it's just beyond that. So it's nice to hear your side of like fighters, and that's a big thing, guys. Most people don't realize guys making their debut or like their first time in the EFC have never really actually stepped in that cage. Yeah. They've probably never even stepped in a cage at times. You know what I mean? Yeah. Besides the amateur setup, if they've come through those ranks, and that's a massive thing, and it's. The EFC have set it up quite nicely. They've got a lot of lights. It's all set up for filming, so it's quite realistic to get that feel of what's going to happen. And I think that's a massively important thing, for fighters to understand range and distance and where the cage is and how far they are from the center and those sort of things. And another big thing for me what this shows from the EFC, and it points the sport in direction to say, look, we're willing to make this massive investment into the sport beyond what we've already done. So it says that there's a massive future in the sport, and I think a lot of people like your casual fans or people that are obviously not going to see MMA because of super sport and stuff like that don't realize just how big a sport MMA is, and how far it's come and where it's going. You know what I mean? Like people go, oh, maybe it's a fad that's going to burn out eventually or something like that, but this is just another one of those things that just shows people that like MMA is here to stay. It's the fastest growing sport in the world, and I think in time it's definitely going to be probably one of the most watched in the country.
No, definitely. I mean, there's way more casual fans now than what we used to have. I mean, I remember when back in the Fight Force days and the EFC one, it was almost like Fight Club style, like propaganda. Like, oh no, there's a fight happening at the Dome, and they're getting guys from America to come and they're fighting in a cage. And now everyone kind of knows what MMA is. They might not be the most educated individual about the sport, but at least they kind of have an understanding, and it's more mainstream. You flick through the channels, like Starsat had one of these action sports channels. Every time we went on there, it was kickboxing and MMA and whatever. And now super sport, like there's programming every day for MMA, Whereas like 2010, you literally had to like troll the internet, do torrents, download this, try and like just get your hands on some footage. But now like everyone's got access to it. So it's also quite comforting that someone makes that investment, like you said, it's not going to be another like fly-by-night type of scenario where guys come in, they do one or two events and they bugger off. EFC have come in and obviously like made massive investments into a scene that didn't exist, which is like very risky. And I know they get like a lot of backlash for some of their decisions, but obviously they need to make it financially viable to do this. So it's very comforting that they've put this investment in for the Performance Institute, and I'm just really excited to see what happens with it. It's still like very early days.
Absolutely. So. There was two things I picked up in what you're saying there. The first one is super sport, and I actually spoke to some of the guys at EFC about it. It's funny how I think it's all sports, and it's not like an MMA thing. Like especially in the modern day, because we're online and people can express their opinions. The minute super sport was announced, a lot of people were like, well, goodbye EFC, and I was kind of like, how do you base that decision? Because like it's in the know, the people's minds is this is probably one of the best things to happen to MMA. You know what I mean? It just broadens horizons. Like Kara was saying that it takes off him having to sell MMA in certain corners, certain pockets of society. You know what I mean? It's like, this is what MMA is. This is how it works. You're like, well, you can go and watch the best in the world on super sport, and then you can come and see what we're offering here as the best in Africa. You know what I mean? Which is massive. It's massive for the sport.
I agree completely. Like when EFC pitched up for EFC 1, it was primarily sold to people that were already in the industry.
100%.
Everyone that was in the industry wanted to go see it because finally we could see something that was close-ish to the UFC or to Pride was still had only just gone away at that stage, and they had Strikeforce out at that stage. So like at EFC 1 they were selling to the current community, but now with people being exposed to the UFC on Super Sports, they're getting a glimpse into our community, and then they can come and see the EFC.
100%.
Whereas so now you're selling the actual EFC events to casual fans rather than to the actual community itself. So it's exciting. But I think the next learning curve is like trying to educate all the casual fans about what they're actually watching and seeing in the cage, so that it isn't ever portrayed. I know boxing in South Africa is quite adamant to try and portray MMA as this barbaric thing, and they're putting every sort of restriction possible on MMA fighters transitioning between the two sports. But like,
sorry, man,
the more educated everyone gets, the more they'll realize that what boxing South Africa is trying to do to MMA is absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I was watching, I think it was Wade Groth's last fight, and the commentators kept on saying that, like referring like this is not cage fighting. I'm like, mate, cage fighting doesn't even exist anymore. You know what I mean? It's like mixed martial artist is what he is. He's a cage fighter, and if he keeps doing that, he's going to be in trouble in boxing. And I was just like, obviously, I mean, it's an uneducated point of view, but we'll break through that eventually. The other thing I wanted to say is you mentioned about EFC, and sometimes people have negative things about their decisions, and I think these are always the biggest talking points in MMA. And it's not like an EFC thing. It's an MMA thing. You know what I mean? Like the producers of the shows, the CEOs, the owners, the matchmakers, these guys make decisions based on what they think is going to sell seats at the end of the day and sell pay-per-view numbers. That's what the sport is at the end of the day.
100%.
They're trying to sell, like the best promotions are putting on the best fights possible to them. Whether you agree with that or not is entirely up to you as a fan. Everyone has a different opinion. And this is a nice talking point which is happening now locally is the talk of Zulu Boy and I've gone blank.
Jake Hadley.
Yeah, Jake Hadley. I wanted to say something else. Jake Hadley. So, and all of a sudden there's all this mixed reactions. You know what I mean? Like people are like, how can he come straight into the EFC and get a title fight? Which is not the first time we've seen this happen. And I do understand where people are getting upset with that, but in the modern day MMA setup, you have to take your hat off to Jake Hadley because he's done all the right things. You know what I mean? He's called out the guy that nobody wants to fight.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's made the noise and he's sold that fight for himself already. So just from your point of view, obviously as a guy who loves MMA and is actively involved, what do you think about that kind of scenario? And each time one of these things happen, it's individual, so it's got different circumstances. I look at the situation, I'm like, well, firstly, there's nobody calling Zulu Boy out. Secondly, he's had so little fights for the dominant kind of champion that he is. You know what I mean? And Graham kind of said it. He's like, well, he's the champion. If that's what he wants, that's what he's going to get.
Yeah.
And he's a dominant force. You know what I'm saying? And there aren't realistically guys are not queuing up to fight him.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So just give us your thoughts on that. Yeah.
I think what people need to realize is that MMA is a sport for the athletes.
Yeah.
And it's entertainment business for the promoters.
Sure.
Right. So everything the promoters need to do is about selling an event. To the crowds. So when someone comes in and they talk the talk and they're willing to try and walk the walk and they've got some sort of following, I think it's understandable that they come in and get like either an immediate title shot or an immediate contendership shot. What guys also need to realize is that when the EFC bring these internationals in, it's a far bigger investment than getting a local fighter to fight. You're spending 30,000 Rand on an airplane ticket, or even 45,000 between the two, the tournament and the fighter. You're putting them up in hotels. You have to feed them daily. What people don't realize is that every fighter who fights away from home gets a per diem. So every day you get a bit of money to feed yourself. Obviously, they also want the experience to be good for the guys. So safari drives and you name it. So it's a far bigger investment to bring out an international. So to bring them out to fight a mid-tier guy or even like an unknown makes zero sense. So when you bring them out, you want to bring out someone that's a strong fighter and that could either fight one fight and then fight for the title or immediately fight for the title. And if they come short, then you can stop investing in that person and move along, and start looking at local talent to maybe step into that. Secondly, you have to give credit to the Brit. I mean, I think Zulu must account for about 50% of all the insurance claims that come out of the UFC. Constantia definitely aren't a big fan on that, right? So yeah, you're right. There's no one that really wants to fight. There's a handful of guys locally that are willing to do it, but every time he steps in there, he literally just butchers the guys.
Yeah.
The only time we've seen him come short in recent history is his Ultimate Fighter performance.
Yeah.
And that it was just more him being neutralized rather than him getting beaten. So yeah, I think it's fine. I think you can find many examples around the world where it's happened, where guys come in with a big background, a big following, they get immediate title shots. I mean, some people come into the UFC and get given a title, like Ronda. I mean, she literally didn't even have to fight for the title.
Sure.
So it's entertainment business for the promoters and it's a sport for the athletes and the coaches, So I think once you understand that in your mind, you can understand some of the decisions that get made from a promoter's point of view.
100%. And like you hear a lot of the talk about Jake Hadley, like he's getting this, he's getting that, but I think the other narrative what people miss is that if you look at it from like outside the box of what's going on, all the risk is on Zulu Boy.
Yeah,
understand what I'm
100%.
saying? Because you're like, oh, he's only 3-0. I'm like, exactly. So if Zulu Boy, who's on this ride, he's this dominant champion, loses to a 3-0, where does that leave him in his career? You know what I'm saying? If he's taking the risk of the fight's being sold already, realistically, because everybody's talking about it. So they've ticked all the boxes in terms of marketing, and it's only going to get bigger from there. You know what I mean? Because Zulu Boy is quite a phenomenon with that, is that he's very quiet in the build-up, but once you get him like sitting next to a guy, it's fireworks. He's actually really good at that confrontation.
He takes things very personally.
Yeah, he does, but he expresses himself really well, and he says the good things. You know what I mean? He says funny things, and he comes on the assault, like the verbal assault, which is quite cool. But we don't see that in the build-up.
Yeah.
So often it can be hard to sell his fights because he's so dominant. You know what I mean? Like no one wants to take that fight. He's really quiet. He's not seen as like this like big selling marketing factor. You know what I mean?
100%.
So I think Jake Hadley's gone about that all the right ways, you know what I mean? He's basically teed up that fight. He just out of nowhere popped up. I mean, he's been calling out the EFC to sign him for quite some time. I think because he was training with Yannick Bahati. It was the first time we saw him, and they were talking about him. He's this kid, he's dangerous, he's going to be a future star. And then he started from there, and then this momentum built, and all of a sudden he was like, okay, Zulu boy, that's the fight I want. I mean, he could have called out BK, he could have called out Danchiel Moodley, he could have called out Marino Kutundana, and he bypassed all of that.
Well, it was the shortest line to get to a fight. I mean, like, everyone, with no disrespect to those guys, I mean, most guys would take an opportunity against a couple of the guys you mentioned, but there's not this long list of guys sitting saying, come, this fight Zulu boy, you know, so... there's two ways of either doing it. You either have to be a phenom in the cage and like let your fighting completely speak for itself and you get the title shot, or you have to be a promotional wizard and you get in there and you say the right things at the right time to the right people.
Absolutely,
and you need to make it feel as natural as possible. And I think that's where he's coming. On a side note, though, I do think it's a horrific fight to debut on African soil against the Zulu boy. As I said, he's got a long list of just like absolutely murdering guys, just carving them up. Like, so yeah, props to him, but shit, that's a tough fight.
Yeah, man, and again, and I think that's what makes that so exciting, because there's absolutely no doubt in my mind. It's not like Jake Hadley doesn't know who he is. Yeah. He would have watched all of these fights. He would have heard all of the stories. He would have heard the messages coming back from his teammates from here, going back to the UK. You know what I mean? He knows how dangerous he is, and he's still calling for that fight. So either he's batshit crazy, or he 100% backs himself. Maybe
I think a bit of both.
Yeah, probably a bit of both. He's probably spotted something where he feels he can expose Zulu boy. And look, the thing is for me is like, I want to see our champions fight. To be honest, like, it is weird having someone 3-0, but if that kid's if he's got the nuts to do it, but bring him. Let him have it, you know what I'm saying, and let him be tested. The thing is, for me, it's like a lose-lose for him at the end of the day. You know, it's one of those situations like we saw TJ Dillashaw going down. You know, it's okay, like, had he won, you fought a smaller dude. It was going to be those sort of conversations, you know what I'm saying? And
there's an expectation for him to
exactly. So it's one of these weird setups again. What does he have to lose? You know what I'm saying? Like, if he gets butchered by the most dominant flyweight champion we've ever had, you're going to be like, well, we kind of expected that.
Exactly. His life doesn't really change much at 3-1. What people also don't realize is that every fighter wants to try and get onto the UFC's radar. So being outside of the American territory, it's very difficult on that radar, because obviously they're monitoring all the regional promotions there. And once you're on the radar, they're trying to see they want to see you beat another good guy, and then maybe you get your call up to the big show. Whereas like when you're outside of the North America, you know, once you're on their radar, there's a lot to lose. You know, only one loss and you're off the radar again. And if you're not fighting relevant people, internationals, on a regular basis, you also fall off the radar. So like Zulu boy's in a little bit of a tough position where he literally has to take any potential threats and just try and demolish them. And so he can get back onto that radar to get back into the UFC. I mean, he was on the verge. So he got on their radar, but it's a long road back to like once you're off of it, you know.
Yeah, and it's a lot harder from here. That's I think what a lot of people don't realize. I mean, Don's the third fighter officially in the UFC. We've had Zulu Boy in the Ultimate Fighter and JP Bays in the contestant series, so the contender series. So it's very hard, you know what I mean? And these guys have to do that little bit extra to break that barrier down. I mean, obviously, I think with the UFC being now a little bit more active in Africa, I believe that some of the guys from UFC are going to be out here coming to see the EFC, see what's happening. So we are narrowing those bridges. But for a guy like Zulu Boy and the now generation, if you can say that, it's so hard for them to break that barrier, you know what I mean? So if there's an international threat, it looks good for them, you know what I mean? And it makes a lot of sense for them. So look, man, I'm excited about that fight. Obviously, there's a lot of negativity about it. There's a lot of positivity about it in the same breath, you know what I mean? And like I say, if there's somebody lining up, calling out Zulu Boy and really wants that fight,
Yeah.
who are we to deny him?
100%. And you know, like that's also his living. He needs to take fights as regularly as
Absolutely.
possible.
Absolutely.
I mean, what people forget is that if you don't fight, you don't get paid. This isn't a sport where you get a monthly salary. You know, you have to pitch up in fights and you get your pay. Even your endorsements, you know, a lot of them are per fight based.
Yeah.
Some have retainers, but I mean, for Zulu Boy to say yes to it, it's a no-brainer for him. International guy, he gets a fight pretty soon in the year. I think people should be less critical and just be like happy that something's happening in this environment. You know, there's many countries, even in Europe, in Asia, where nothing's happening, right? Like you go to France and you're still in like outlaw territory. It's still illegal to fight in France. But in South Africa, we can see at least 10 quality shows a year on a professional basis, and we got a decent series coming up with the Fighter season 2. I mean, you have to give credit where credit's due. Like, as far as the promotion goes, UFC is definitely like a top 5 promotion in the world. From like entertainment value to like actual production quality, and I think they get like, I mean, we've both been criticized for being too pro UFC, but like I just think like people are just very quick to jump on the bandwagon of like being super critical, and they're doing this and that incorrectly, but like no one sits back and says, okay, well, like look what they have done correctly, right? They invested in an industry that had almost no investment in. There was no actual foundation for them to build up. They built it themselves, you know. But people don't hear the stories of like Cairo and Graham fixing the cage on the night of UFC 1, and like the type of like horror stories that most folks would be like, fuck this, I'm out of here, man. This isn't for me, you know. So I think Oaks should be a little bit less critical and a little bit more thankful for everyone who's doing something positive in the sport, you know. Like lots of coaches get super negative criticism all the time, and you're like, but I don't understand it, you know. Like not everything's a challenge, you know. Like you can respect someone else for doing a good job, you know. Like we don't always have to be beating each other, but yeah, I don't know.
No, absolutely, man. And it's like I try to explain to somebody. I can't remember. It had something to do. For some reason, I remember EFC 50. I want to say it was headlined by Martin van Salen versus Dricus du Plessis. I might be wrong, but someone was saying they had a lot to say about the card and whatever being. I think it was in Sun City. So I thought back, you know what? Let's go back and look at UFC 50 and let's compare apples with apples, because it's very obvious. Everyone wants to get to the UFC as a fighter, and all promotions want to be as good as the UFC as a promotion. So we have to compare those two. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I was like,
flagship.
Exactly. I was like, go through the fight card and the posters and the artwork and the production value and put the two together.
Yeah.
It's chalk and cheese, but and the EFC surpassed that. You know what I mean? And the EFC's been around I think this is their 8th year.
Yeah.
And see where they've gone from.
I think
the
December
dome,
2009, if I'm not mistaken, was the first event. So it's like 10-year challenge, man. Like that's like literally
10-year challenge. That should happen. Let's see it.
And in line with that, if you go look at purses from like back then, you know, like people forget that like Strikeforce, which was the second biggest promotion in the world at one stage, there were like some of the events had like 6 or 7 amateur bouts on a professional card, which is ludicrous, you know. Like some guys in the UFC at some stage were earning like $1,000 to show and $1,000 to win. Like if people don't understand, like that's not far off what undercard fighters get in the EFC, you know. Like it's like I just don't understand. But once again, they're comparing the UFC now and the EFC now, and it's not you can't compare the two. Like they it's like having an 8-year-old versus a 25-year-old. You know, it's like you just can't do it. There were 10-year-olds, the 10-year anniversary this year. So it's whoever's watching this, like, let's just chill a little bit.
Let's find the positives. In that, you mentioned the Fighter Season 2 coming up, and I think this is it's going to be another chance for the EFC to really show their muscle, to really show how far they've come. Obviously, even for me, the first season, there was a lot of mistakes made. I think they know that. The fights weren't of great quality. You know, the guys were complaining about altitude, but I was like, but the altitude in the first week, I'm with you. Week 5, we've got to get over it. You know what I mean? And there was a lot of that stuff. There was a lot of guys, I got struck in the back of the head. That's why I lost. And you know, there was a lot of strange things going on. I think the cast was was okay. I don't think there was a couple of good fighters in there, not an entire house full of great fighters. You know what I mean? I think they made a mistake by saying, okay, the winner's going to fight Dricus. They never said they was just going to fight for a belt. They never actually said Dricus, but anyway, it was insinuated that it was going to be Dricus. That's the way I saw it and everybody else saw it. I don't think they needed to do that. I think Brendan Lazar could have just been the inaugural winner. I think that would have been enough. He could have got his contract. He could have been the winner. He could have fought.
Maybe give him a fat bonus or something.
Yeah, something like that. You know what I mean? I don't think he had to fight for a title. I think that was a mistake. I think if realistically they could admit, okay, look, maybe we were a bit over ambitious with that. But I do understand why they did that. They wanted to give it more relevance, more steam, more incentive. You know what I mean? And I get it. But I think that was a mistake. So now they've done the same thing. The winner of the fight season 2 is going to get a crack at Manolino. Makes way more sense to me because there is nobody else. You know what I'm saying? So all of a sudden, you're not
a long line of people waiting.
You're not just making a show. You're creating a division in one show. And by the time that show is done, you know the entire division. You've got to see who they are, what they do, where they're from, what they're capable of. I think that to me is pure genius. I think it's brilliant. You know what I mean? And everyone was calling out for a ladies division, for growth. And you know, we've had contenders come and go, and Jackie's been there. She's kind of come and go. She was still calling for the title shot, but Amanda's stopped everybody.
I think from Jackie's point of view, her only opportunity is to win.
Absolutely.
I mean, I think one fight was like a 10-second knockout, if I'm not mistaken, and the other one,
something ridiculous.
Other one was also like quite a dominant victory. I think she got choked out, rear naked choke or something.
It was almost like a standing rear naked choke.
So I mean, I think Jackie's only opportunity to get back there would probably be through this, and you know, I think people should support the South African, but also like you have to give credit to these girls that come out far away to a city that is like altitude is a factor in Johannesburg, and away from your family.
Most dangerous in the world.
You have to survive walking down the block rather than survive your fight. But I agree with you. I think season 1 was a lot of like school fees being paid. I think maybe they made some mistakes with production. I heard they had to like reproduce the whole show at one stage, which was a bit out of their control. So I think they learned a lot in season 1, and I think we've been fortunate enough to see some of what the stuff that's been happening. I think already there's been a dramatic improvement.
Absolutely,
how they're doing it,
that's where I was going with this. Was like, you know, guys like I said have been fortunate enough to go and witness the fights and the weigh-in and the training. There's such a different feel about it. The cast, if we can call them that, is they are of a very high level. They're from all over the world. They're female champions from all over the world. Netherlands, Romania, UK, Greece. They're from all over. And there's a lady from American Top Team. Very high caliber fighters. And I think absolutely in that crop is a future EFC champion. I don't doubt it for a second, because I've seen the quality, you know what I mean? And as the fights roll on, they're going to get more and more and more intense. And I think as the show develops, it's going to get more and more intense. And I think the EFC, they seem way more in control of what's going on. The production's on point. They've got every imaginable piece of technology and camera there, you know, like, and having that home setup in the Performance Institute changes everything for them. They're comfortable, you know what I mean? It's like having it in your own house. You're comfortable, you're relaxed, you know what's happening, you're in your own environment. I'm so excited to see the outcome of that show, because we've been able to see a little bit of what's happening. I think it's going to be immense. Unfortunately, the first season had a lot of negativity in it, but I think the thing is, for me, like an MMA promotion, is there really bad publicity? Because you're still going to tune in. You know what I'm saying? Absolutely, you're going to tune in. I've also had a quick chat with Cairo, you know, just about what's happening. He said to me then that they've got huge announcements to make, broadcasting deals, what the future's holding for them, a lot of positive stuff. They are on the move in a big way. You know what I mean? So he was saying to me that this season of The Fighter will be broadcast to almost every corner of the globe. You know, so they're backing it. There's a lot of incentive again for these girls. You know, you come here, you win a show. It's only the second one ever done in South Africa. Young organization, beat the double division champion, claim that gold. Your career's gone from here to here in an instance. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what was great from like what was quite clever from the producer side is they selected some girls that had like a deep background in other martial arts or had like a very successful amateur career. So they were built up with like world champion. They're already a world champion in MMA at an amateur level. And you've seen a lot of those guys that come out from the IMAF World Championships, like that Jose Shorty Torres. Like he was only a couple fights removed from winning the World Championships to being in the UFC, winning on like short notice in the UFC. So I mean, like they got higher level competitors this year, including that Dutch kickboxer. I was actually watching a video of her fighting for a world title the other day. I think what's nice is that people are going to be exposed to female athletes that actually have some skill level. I'm not saying that the local talent doesn't. What I'm trying to get at is that you've got world-class kickboxers coming here. You've got world-class wrestlers coming here. It's going to be great for the casual fan to see that women can also be like very skilled in these various elements of mixed martial arts. Likewise, also with the production, like I think they've got a better plan on how they're doing everything. You know, I think last time they didn't quite understand like how exactly everything was going to roll out, but and I think having a team of cameramen and the whole production team not being familiar with MMA was a difficult point for them.
Sure.
People redoing walkouts, people standing around for like 10-15 minutes in the cage, nothing happening. There's still a little bit of that now, but not because they don't understand. I mean, for those people you don't know, the producer of the show is actually a jiu-jitsu practitioner and has a deep history in film. So there's a better understanding of the sport, you know, and a better understanding of like what to capture and like how much you can actually like postpone things and redo things. So yeah, I think there's going to be a much better season.
Sure.
And this just once they obviously announce all the broadcasting deals, everyone should at least have an understanding of how they're going to watch it this time. I think not a lot of people got to see the first season. Just either people who are on streaming services only, SABC, whatever the case was. So I think you'll definitely get more coverage this time.
Yeah, absolutely. From what I hear, the coverage is going to be
next level.
It's going to be huge. It's going to be from here through Africa, through Europe, through the States. I mean, the EFC has already announced some massive broadcasting deals with likes of the Zone, places in Norway, all through Europe. There's massive things happening. So yeah, it's massively exciting. It's an exciting time even for guys like yourself fighting. Now maybe we've got that little bit of extra exposure. We can squeeze sponsors for a few more rounds and those sort of things. So the platform is only getting bigger, you know. And it's an exciting year for MMA. I think it's going to be cracking, man. That's another thing I wanted to say. Like, it seems to me that there were periods of last year where the EFC. Their matchmaking was maybe held back, maybe it was financial, maybe they were having roster issues, whatever it was, but they were like the cards would start really great and then kind of fizzle out a bit, and that was a general consensus. But now all of a sudden we're just seeing these fights being put on one at a time, and Elena Lunga just mentioned now as we're sitting here that he's got fight news coming, you know what I mean, and all of a sudden we've got a couple of fights where we're just licking our lips, we're like, cheap is okay, this is serious now, you know what I mean, like the fight cards aren't even full, not even nearly halfway, and there's fights that are being announced, and you can see the intent from the EFC, which is great. So I think we know what sort of year it's going to be, which is massively exciting.
Yeah, I agree. You know, it's also matchmaking such a difficult one. You know, like
100%.
you could in theory have the greatest matchups on paper, but like to get both those fighters to the card it can be somewhat difficult. You know. Besides that, obviously you have to add in like negotiation of purses. You have to add in like just like guys breaking down mentally in fight camp. So there's so many things that can really stuff up a card. And for some reason, I don't know what the science or math behind it is like often when like a card starts going south, it goes south very quickly. Like as you start trying to patch up the card, it feels like the card's just falling apart at every turn, right? Even like weigh-in day falling apart. Like I think the intention is there this year, and let's just hope that a lot of it like materializes, you know.
100%.
There's some great fights coming up.
Yeah, and we'll leave those fight cards for a little bit closer to the first EFC card of the year. We'll sit down, we'll go through it, break it down once we've seen all the fights. That is our plan. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we want to get a round table here, get guests in, get get guys that know a little bit more than myself, and maybe a little bit more than Warren.
Oh, please. That would be great.
You know, get some other opinions. If you guys have got questions, you want to hit us up. If you something you want us to discuss, you can hit us up, send us a direct message, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, email address is all there. Myself and Warren King will be doing this definitely at least once a month. Before every fight, that's our plan. So we hope you enjoy the show. If there's anything you want to discuss, you want to get your point of view across, let us know. Don't be scared, and thanks for tuning in.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you, bro.